I recognize that in my unhealthy place right now, all I see is the danger, the unsafety. You could have gotten injured. You shouldn't have done that. And I'm missing the risk reward.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesdays with Watson podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in again. You have landed on the episode for Enneagram Type 6. So this is the 6th episode out of 9 where we are taking a deep dive into the Enneagram and how it can help us understand trauma. So excited for today. Wait till you hear my guest. Let's drop into that conversation. All right, here we are. We've made it to week 6, and my special guest today happens to also be my co-host, Crissy Loughridge, who is representing the Enneagram Type 6. Hey, Chris, what's going on?
Not too much. I'm nervous, but happy to be here.
Yeah, it is a little nervous. We just actually recorded mine a couple of weeks ago, and it was terrifying, actually. So no worries. I promise I don't bite. So we have really enjoyed doing these episodes, and you actually are the last episode to record, ironically. And so let's just dive right in, as we did with the rest of the Enneagram types, as we really, really dive into understanding our personality types and how it can help us process trauma. So Chris, you are the Enneagram 6, but before we talk about that, we're asking everyone the same question to open up the podcast. And that question is, what is your favorite thing about how God made you?
I love and hate this question. I think everyone has said that, but I've really enjoyed everyone's answers. So from the other standpoint, I've really, really enjoyed that we've asked this question. For me, I like that I am curious about everything, and I believe that that is part of my sixness. It does make having conversations with strangers easier for me because I'm genuinely interested in your cow manure plant that you have there. Everything else, everything's interesting to me. And so I love that about myself because it makes the world a very curious and fun place to live in.
That's so funny that you said that. That's one of my favorite things about you too, actually, because you are so curious, and that lends itself to teaching, right? It lends itself to imparting knowledge. And I love when we're having conversations and I see you cross your arms and I know like you're diving deep into that conversation. And that's particularly true of anything spiritual. And I do love that about you. I think that's a cool thing. You're also a pretty remarkable friend. And you know, the Enneagram 6 is called the loyalist. And nobody asked me this question, but I'm going to answer it anyway. Probably my favorite thing about you is how loyal you are. And anybody who's listened to this podcast knows how loyal you are. Also a remarkable coach and friend and teacher and all the things, which I think really does feed into what you just said.
Yeah, I love being loyal, but even more than that, I love being trustworthy. And when others trust me with information, their heart, even I do bookkeeping. Even when people trust me, that is the greatest honor for me. And so I love being a good friend, but I love being trustworthy in all areas of my life. So loyal and trustworthy seem to go hand in hand to me, but the trustworthy is what resonates the most with me.
Yeah, that you definitely are trustworthy. I will say that I don't think that I have ever met anybody in my entire life who I can say this about. You will not tell a lie.
I really try not to. I really do not. I really don't want, it just bothers me. And so the trustworthy really, really resonates very, very high in me.
Yeah, lying bothers all of us, but none of us feel great about it, but I'm just saying.
It's my favorite thing.
But no, that loyalty, there's just something to it. And there's something very deep and personal to me because I get to be the recipient of this thing that you love about yourself, this curiosity and this loyalty, and so loyal and so trustworthy, and who I can look in the eye and ask a difficult question and fully know that the truth is coming out of your mouth. Your heart for the Lord is one of my favorite things about you. And again, nobody asked me, but it's my podcast, and so I get to say it. So, okay, well, let's move right along. And so you are an Enneagram type 6. And so just for the listeners out there, I'm going to read the basic core fear of the type 6s. As we mentioned, many places the type 6s are called the loyalists. But your core fear really is rooted in safety. 6s really struggle when they feel like they are not supported. Would you agree with that, by the way?
Yes, it resonates more on kind of on the flip side of I really like to have a lot of opinions. Most people don't want a lot of opinions in their life. I crave them. I need them. I need somebody else to say, oh yeah, I see it that way too.
Yeah, it's so funny because I've known you for a long time, and anybody who has listened to this podcast for any amount of time, especially in that first season and these 3 episodes that are called Memory Keeper episodes, the dynamics of our friendship very early on was very one-sided, quite frankly. Like I was unable to add anything to that. And so, but as I got healthier, I didn't realize this about you. And this does bring to light a little bit of your current pain and your brother's current pain and my current pain and anybody who knows your mom, because she was that committee for you, right?
She was that and the stability in a lot of ways. Like I have a lot of great deep friendships and everything, but she was sort of that rock underneath. And unfortunately, probably leaning a little too heavily on her. She had just such a strong faith. It was like having a direct line to God. And I've really struggled without her voice to find my way to the Lord because I don't trust myself. And so I'm not sure that I'm hearing from the Lord. And I always had her to go, hey, is this right? Am I hearing from the Lord? And she could grab 185 scriptures to say, yes, I think so. And so I struggle with that loss for the stability.
I remember times when I first moved in with you, I remember being in my room and just loving that you guys talked every day on the phone. And literally I would overhear conversations from, well, should I put this couch here or should I take this job, And so I can hear in your voice how this core fear resonates with you. That's the actual formal question, is that in trauma and unfortunately, this particular trauma that you are living through right now is what feels like an unending trauma. And this, what the experts call anticipatory grief of losing this big voice in your life and this big stability in your life. And so you have realized your fear with the loss of your mom, because like you said, you don't trust yourself. And so Enneagram 6s out there, if you don't trust yourself, don't feel like that is unusual. Find somebody who will remind you how amazing you are. But Crissy, here's my question, and here's the one that you asked me on my interview. How then are you living now? How are you walking through this with God, this loss of this voice that feeds into this core fear of the Enneagram 6?
Not well. I'm struggling my way through. It's been obviously it's been hard. And to say it's been hard is sort of a joke. But for my faith, I think the hard part is I'm quite optimistic usually, even though I do see the worst case scenario. I'm very typical 6 on that. I see the worst case scenario, but I see all the hope too. And so I typically I love life. But this with mom is the first that I really feel like, what's the point? And it feels like it's such a loss. And coupled with all the other losses for me, it feels like, what's the point?
That's hard to hear, but I understand. So 6s need to trust because you're trustworthy. How are you trusting in a sovereign God who chose this for Mama Bootsy and then for you? How are you reconciling that, or are you?
I am. I don't know if a lot of logic goes with us, the 6s.
Yes, they do.
Okay. Yeah. Well, here's the logic for me. I can either believe that there's no God and that this was all a big spontaneous combustion of things, and here we are on planet Earth with a bunch of humans with DNA that's larger than anybody can comprehend, and it just miraculously happened. Or any of the other religions that don't make any sense. Or I can believe that there's a God and that I don't understand everything, and I don't understand. But I land at the same place. The Bible makes sense. Logically, for me, I understand that there is a faith leap, but there's a lot in there that is logically makes sense. And I land at, I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. And so whether I understand what he's doing or the bad things that happen every day on this planet, I don't get that. I won't. Not this side of heaven. But I'm going to land back at Jesus because that makes sense.
And what a precious answer, because at the end of the day, we all have that question. We all have that decision to make. Is there a God or isn't there a God in spite of what I'm experiencing as a human being? And so as you walk through this, I am it does encourage my heart that you haven't put God in this category of people who can't be trusted, Yeah. And so for sixes out there who are experiencing loss and trauma, as Crissy is describing, that with the loss of her mom, who really feeds into this core fear. When we talk about the sovereignty of God, one of the ways that you can know that you can trust him is because he told you that this was going to happen. And John chapter 16, I mention all the time on this podcast, where the Bible says, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, have peace, because I have overcome the world. And Crissy, one thing that will happen is that Bootsy will be in the arms of Jesus. She will be safe in his arms. So that encourages my heart to hear that you've landed at a place where you know that even as a six, having realized your worst fear, somebody lying to you, somebody betraying you, or your committee, that voice, your mom's voice in your head, so encouraging to me to hear that answer. But I know that isn't always the case. And so I wonder for not only you, but for other sixes out there, as you try to balance this sovereignty of God and this, you're one of the most black and white people I've ever met in my life. Justice, I don't know if other sixes are like that, but I know you struggle with, this is the one thing that your mom asked God not to do. And so, but I wonder if for those sixes out there who have experienced trauma and loss, and particularly if it's a person who was this part of this committee and the safety and the voices that you guys need, what does Satan do to trip you up so that you can't answer that question the way you just did with the sovereignty of God? What tricks does he use to get you?
So one of the things that's been bothering me lately, so I have been looking up about sixes and how we respond to things, and one of the Enneagram Institute paragraphs says that we're like ping pong balls. Well, that set me on a trail of, I don't want to be a ping pong ball. But then I bounce back to, well, then ping pong balls are good. And just like a ping pong ball. And then I thought, oh, well, then I am living the verse in James that says, double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. And so then I'm thinking, this is the tool that Satan uses. Oh, so I'm constantly the double-minded man, and I'm constantly unstable because I'm a ping pong ball. So this is the tool that Satan uses. I'm broken. There's nothing I can do to fix it. They've already told me I'm a ping pong ball, and there's nothing you can do about it. But that's a lie. And so for all the sixes out there, if you've read that article or you feel like a ping pong ball, and the interesting thing was, if we can laugh about it, it really is funny. We can be both stubborn and not stubborn. We can be passive aggressive. We can be passive aggressive.
Preach.
We can be, it went back and forth between all the things. And so I am constantly battling the fact that I feel like I'm all over the place. But there's a good side to that. I am not so stubborn and stuck on one thing that I don't bounce to the other side. And that can be good in relationship to be able to at least identify both sides of an issue and not be so stuck that I'm not able to hear both sides. So take that, Satan. I may be a ping pong ball, but I'm a good one.
You're a bouncy ping pong ball. No, that's a great description. I can see where that would serve to indict you at first, right? But for somebody like me, as an Enneagram 2, there's no ping in our pong, no bounce in our step, no change in our anything. You know what I'm saying? We are what we are, and we stay there, and there's not this opportunity to realize, hey, I'm on the wrong side of the ping pong net right now. Let me get on the right side of the ping pong net. I will tell you, as your friend and as your business partner, as your sister from another mister, should we use that? But as somebody who is loved by you and who loves you, I love your Enneagram 6ness. It drives me crazy, not gonna lie, because for those of you out there who love 6s like I do, I can say, I could pick up this battery that I have in my hand right now, and I can say, hey, Chris, I think we could use this to go to the moon, because maybe I've studied, or maybe somebody told me that we could use this battery to go to the moon. And Crissy, you will find every reason why I can't use this battery to go to the moon. That is your superpower. Talk to us a little bit about that superpower, because for those of us who love you, it can produce frustrating, what we call, inside joke, fire extinguisher moments, because you're always pushing us back because of the ping and your pong. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So I love the fact that if you bring me an idea, I will find all the pitfalls along the way. But not everybody necessarily appreciates hearing all the things that can go wrong. But understand that if you love a 6, if you have a 6 in your life, ask them if you have a bright idea about something you want to do and you want to know, what are the things that could go wrong? What are the things I may not be seeing? But don't go to them if you just want to daydream and not know. So I love that part about me, but I do have to recognize that not everybody wants to hear all the things that could go wrong all the time.
No, we don't. But it's if people who love 6s, if we can swallow our pride a little bit. And I'm a 2, which I don't know if that has anything to do with being an optimist. Half the glass is always half full, which should not be able to happen with me. And so it took me a minute, and by a minute I mean like a decade plus probably, to realize that you weren't just trying to unravel my fantastic idea. You were really trying to protect me from the pitfalls.
I was trying to make it happen. I'm trying to make you succeed. That is always my goal. It's just that it's going to come across as, here are all the things that are wrong with your idea, not because I think you should not do it, but because I want you to succeed. I want this to come to fruition. And that's not going to happen if you haven't paid attention to the huge gaping hole in your plan.
Yeah. So for those of you who love 6s out there, like she said, when you go to a 6 with an idea, understand that immediately and without even thinking, they are going to find the pitfalls. Here's the other thing that I love about the Enneagram 6s, is you are a fierce protector of other people. And it's something very beautiful in the way God made 6s, in that you also are able to protect people. I think if I were to call the 6s something else, it's the protector. And if you've listened to this podcast at all, you know I'm sitting next to a person who has protected me and would lay down her life for me. And she probably would you too, and she doesn't even know you. But I have been the recipient of that. And so tell me, though, some unhealthy ways that Enneagram 6s can find themselves if they're not careful, so that those of us that love you can be guardrails for that.
I tend to get paralyzed in decision making. So I'll get in my head and I'll just kind of go in a circle with the same decision over and over and over and over and over, and literally over and over again. And so sometimes it either has to be taken out of my hands or force the issue of, okay, you have to make a decision and move forward with whatever, because I can't. The other thing I've noticed recently, because I would say that with the world and mom and all the things going on. I would say that we're in a continual stressful phase, not even trauma, but stress. So I recognize that I'm not in my best frame of mind nor healthiest version of myself. And I've noticed that even when I watched a football game the other day and I saw the quarterback run and do 3 loops and the defenders are coming after him and he happened to throw the ball up and they scored a touchdown. But my immediate thought was, ooh, he shouldn't have done that. He scored a touchdown. And my thought was that was bad because he could have gotten injured. And so I recognize that in my unhealthy place right now, all I see is the danger, the unsafety. You could have gotten injured. You shouldn't have done that. And I'm missing the risk reward of taking a chance. And so this is where, again, for me, I have to have a committee and somebody who's going to go, hey, you're missing out on living because you're so scared of your safety being compromised, because I don't feel safe, period, right now. The world doesn't feel safe. I understand that God is sovereign, but he certainly is allowing plenty of hard things.
Well, and as we've mentioned, and we need to remind people that Satan is the prince of this world, and we have an enemy that fights against us. And so that was really good for me to hear you say, and that was probably Trevor Lawrence, by the way, that threw that ball that probably shouldn't have. But so I think, though, in the right place, that's still, again, a very positive quality of the Enneagram 6s. But so 6s out there, if you find yourself in this hypervigilant space, because Crissy, one of the things that I've also watched over at least the last, 18 months or so, really longer than that, but I've watched this take its toll on you, because as life happens and we all get older, our ability really to deal and to walk things back takes longer. It's harder work. It's all the things. And I've watched it take its toll on your body. And so it is my prayer for not only you, but for all 6s out there, as you find yourself in this hypervigilant space in life. My heart is tender for Enneagram 6s right now, particularly those who have trauma, because you are going to be on that hypervigilant space at all times. And that's where, Crissy, I want to ask you, where 2 of our C's have come in to help you as you try to work through this. And we'll start with the community aspect of it. You are an introvert. You have close, deep friendships. Can you help us understand how community is helping you in this space where you are right now, and in any space where a 6 would find themselves unsafe? How is community helping you right now, if at all?
It's helping a lot. It is integral for me. I have to have my close friends speaking truth, helping me not get paralyzed by decisions and not get hyper focused on the negative. Just the thing that comes to mind is get me out of my head, because I get stuck. And so I'm very grateful. Community is huge for me.
And we talk about it all the time, ad nauseum. And so 6s, you need that committee, like Crissy talked about, and you need people speaking truth into your life. You need people pulling you out of your head. You need people helping you take risks. And so make sure that you have that. And if you don't have that, that brings me to another C, and we've alluded a little bit to it here, and that's church. It is my prayer that you could find yourself under the Word, under somebody who is preaching the Bible from a pulpit that will speak to your heart and help you remember the safety that comes from the completed work of Jesus on the cross. But Crissy, that does lead me to another question that I know has been important in your healing, and as you continue to process through this, how has counseling?
I think that I'm really, really grateful for counseling for me. And I think that the important thing is to find a counselor that you trust, because that is, for me, both I love being trustworthy, but I need trustworthy people. And so I do. I love my counselor, and it has been incredibly helpful to have a safe place to share. And I know at the very beginning, one of my favorite things walking into his office was saying, he's not allowed to share this. This is so trustworthy. It's literally inside this room, and no one gets to know unless I want them to know. And so there is that safety, and that feels comforting. At least
And part of your committee too, right?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah. Dr. Thomas Pettit, Crissy and I happen to share a counselor, and he's amazing. He's amazing, and I strongly encourage counseling on this podcast, as many of you know. He does have 3 episodes in season 1, if you would like to go hear what we get to be under in terms of counseling on whatever basis that we're there. But Dr. Thomas Pettit, those episodes are in season 1. Well, Chris, I'd like to transition a little bit, because we are, as we've both alluded to here, we are somewhere, hopefully towards the end of a global pandemic. This is being recorded in 2021. How have you walked it? How has it affected you? And how has being a 6 played to your strength in this pandemic?
So when everyone else was really kind of going to ground and probably struggling more, that's where I tend to shine. And so at the beginning of the pandemic, I was calm as a cucumber. It was fine. But now that it is, life has gotten back to some semblance of normal. I realize that there's still a lot of stuff out there, but people have gone back to work, and life has kind of moved on. Now is when I've struggled more. And that's pretty typical for me. If there's something traumatic or stressful, I'm fine during, but I'll finally deal with it. Usually about 6 months afterwards, I'll crash. And so I am struggling now more than I was before. And it's, I think the great news is that God put us together, because you struggled early, I'm struggling now. And so I was able to kind of keep things calm then, and you're helping me now. And so it's worked out well.
It's an interesting dynamic. Some people said that, Enneagram 6s have been preparing their whole lives for this. So I'm curious about something. Do you think the reason why you didn't struggle, and I've been with you, I broke my arm a couple years ago, and you were a freaking rock star, like built for that, right? Is that because the Enneagram 6s have prepared for all of those worst case scenarios? I mean, I don't know how you could prepare for a pandemic. I didn't even know it was a thing except for in history books. But because that tends to be a little confusing to me. If your core fear is safety, and everybody's safety is and was and will be compromised as a result of the COVID-19 coronavirus. So that's a little confusing to me. Help me understand that.
I think that all day, every day, I'm going through scenarios of things that can happen. Now, I had no clue, obviously, about a pandemic, but we typically, and I could immediately start to do if this, then that. And so it's like a tidal wave of, okay, worst case. Okay, then we will do this. While you might have been, oh my gosh, the world's coming to an end, I'm thinking, okay, but if that, then I'll do this. Then I'll switch gears. So we're going out 13, 14 decisions ahead to keep our safety. Gotcha. So whatever in that moment, so you broke your arm and my head was already going 10 decisions ahead. I knew you were going to get sick to your stomach. Grab my peppermint. Oh my gosh, she's going to this, that. And so I'm already trying to be several decisions ahead in case the worst thing happens.
That makes so much sense, because it didn't to me. Because, and most people listening probably are like, well, that doesn't make sense, because this is the most unsafe we've ever been, possibly, at least in our lifetimes. And so why would somebody whose core fear is safety do well, and I'm air quoting when I say well, during a pandemic? And then for you to be so transparent to say, but now, because I don't know that anybody could have prepared for as long as this has gone on. And for the depths, really, that could affect us. You and I own a business together, and there was at one point where we were both looking at each other after having had that business open for 10 years, 11 years looking like we are going to lose our livelihood. What are we going to do?
But that's not the part that has me stressed out now. So then that didn't stress me out then, because I already had accounted for that. So I already gone to the worst case scenario. We'll lose our business. Here's what we'll do. We'll change course and blah, blah, blah. That's not what bothers me. When it's all said and done, I look back and go, oh, crap. What did we just go through? So when I had my thyroid surgery and it was cancer, I was fine then because I was working through, okay, worst case scenario. But when it's all over, then I look back and go, oh, there's no safety anywhere. That's when I start to freak out, for lack of a better word.
This is one of those times I forget we're on a podcast interview because I'm like, I'm now nodding. Y'all can't see me. I'm nodding my head. I'm like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. That makes so much sense. And even to hear you describe it like I'm 10 or 12 steps ahead and that's good because I'm typically 10 or 12 behind. And so we land right at the middle ground. And so it's interesting. It really is. And so I hope that sixes out there resonate with that. Like if you're confused too, like, why am I fine or why was I fine and my friends weren't? And why am I falling apart now? And it reminds me, and I've referenced this a couple of times on this podcast, and only people of a certain age will really even know what I'm talking about. But there's a poem called Footprints, and the whole part of the poem is about this man who is walking on the beach, and he's struggling, and he's going through all these hard things, and then suddenly he looks down, and he's walking with somebody. He looks down, and he only sees one set of footsteps, and he's confused. And he looks at the person with whom he was walking, who happens to be Jesus. And Jesus said, it was then that I carried you. And I wonder if sixes are looking back now. And I've had that experience with some trauma. I look back and go, oh my gosh, how did I ever get through that? It was then that he carried you, Crissy Loughridge. And so as you are going through it now, I think that that makes a lot of sense, and I hope it will to sixes out there too. Well, as we near the end of the podcast, the last question that we are asking, and we've really spoken to it quite a bit, but I want to ask the question formally of you is, what do you want the world to know about Enneagram sixes? How can we help you?
I think that for as much as I don't need to use a whole lot of words, I do need to verbally process through things. So allow your sixes to talk. Give them opinions. We like opinions. We're asking for them. And we're going to give you the worst case scenario. If you don't want it, say so. But we're typically come to us when you have an idea that you want to know if there are pitfalls to your idea. We're going to find those for you, and we're sorry.
And we're sorry. But do not be sorry. So if I'm hearing you properly, it is really can be narrowed down to one word, and that's listen. And then if I were to add another word, it would be to ask. Because I know at least my experience with you as a six, being as strong and as emotionally healthy as you are and as deep in the Lord you are, sometimes and because sixes, and especially you, have this bravado of that, like that day I broke my arm, let's get the ice, let's get the peppermint, hey, you, find the urgent care. That's not exactly how that happened, but you made sure all of the wheels moved, and we need you. We need sixes. And so that is very helpful for us to know that you're not superhuman, that even though you are probably the personality type that are the special forces in the military and the CIA and all the places, because you have this ability to see things that we can't. And so we want to capitalize on that. But more than that, Crissy, we want to love you. We want to love you well. And what I want to speak into the lives of sixes is that when you feel unsafe, when you feel hung out to dry, when you feel all of those things, go to Isaiah chapter 43, because literally everything that you could think of He promises to be with you through fire, through water, through all the storms of life. He promises to be there with you. And so, Crissy, I speak Isaiah 43 over you. I know Psalm 91 is very, very special to you. And I speak Psalm 91 into the lives of sixes. When the fiery darts by night and the arrows by day come, you remember that you have a God who has already taken care of everything you ever need to be safe. And if the worst thing in this world ever happened, and is that your life were to end, and you have placed your trust in the completed work of Jesus on the cross, you're going someplace that will always be safe for the rest of eternity. And so, Crissy, thank you so much for being here. This was such an amazing conversation. It just felt like one of our normal coffee conversations. But I hope that Enneagram 6s out there have been blessed. And Crissy, I was just wondering, do you have any parting words, not only for Enneagram 6s, but for anybody else out there listening?
I do hope that it's helpful for 6s out there. I don't know. I don't know that I have any 6 friends, so please reach out. I'd love to know if any of this resonates with anyone else.
Yeah, I'll have to think about that, especially if we share any. But okay, well, thank you so much for being here as usual. We will be back here in 2 weeks back in the Healing Zone, and we will be up to the Enneagram Type 7, who I have dubbed the Good Time Charlies. And that is a fascinating interview with a good friend of mine who has a lot of wisdom to share with you. And so I hope that you will tune in. If you have not subscribed to the podcast, right there when you're on your podcast app, it's easy. If you're on Apple Podcasts, just hit that check mark in the top right-hand corner. Any other platform, you just subscribe or follow. And we would love to continue to journey with you as we are in this season 3, trauma, spaces, places, and aces. And we are focusing on an ace to help us with our trauma. So we will be back here in 2 weeks in the Healing Zone. And until then, you know what I'm going to say. You are seen, you are known, you are loved, you are heard, and you are valued.
Let my life glorify you and teach me to walk